Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back for another EVE Online discussion video, and in today's video I'm going to talk about what else the tax changes that CCP has planned for the Citadel expansion. Now, to a lot of normal MMOs, a tax change might be something small, something that is basically a small sink of the currency. But here in EVE Online, I actually think that this is going to be a really big deal. And this is pretty much in line with what I was expecting CCP to do when they first announced Citadel. They first announced that players would be allowed to create their own markets and have control over the taxes there. So let's try to find the post in question. You can just go to the forums for that. Then we have the upcoming feature and change feedback center. And here we go. Where was it? Citadel's changing NPC taxes. So it's not just like market taxes or a flat tax that is being changed, but it's actually a little bit of an overhaul of all the existing taxes which have not been touched since I think it was 2003 when they first launched. So let's start with offices in Citadels. Unlike renting offices in NPC stations, there will be no office limit in Citadel. As long as you are granted access by the owner, there will be no limitation about creating an office there. Office rental will be a flat fee fixed by the owner. The fee will not have an NPC tax of any sort. So personally, we don't use offices, so I don't know how important these are, but I guess the bigger your corporation becomes, the more important it is that you do have the office functionality. And so this is just a small little addition to the Citadels that is actually going to be pretty good for people that can make their Citadels popular, or for major Citadels amongst bigger alliances. So basically you'll have unlimited office space that will be at a flat fee. I presume you can also make those free. So it doesn't really require an extra module on the Citadel or anything like that. It just becomes something that a Citadel will be better at than an NPC station. Next up, we've got medical clones. We are thinking of keeping the 100,000 ISK fee for changing the home station in a Citadel. Just like NPC stations, as long as you have access, you will never face an artificial limit to medical clones in Citadels. I don't think that this is actually such a big deal, and there doesn't seem to be a difference between putting your home station in a Citadel compared to an NPC station, which I think makes a lot of sense, because that is not something you want to have to like pay a high price for or anything like that. But this one is pretty controversial. Jump clones. Current price for installing jump clones is around 100,000 ISK. We're planning to increase the amount to 5 billion ISK to install a jump clone in an NPC station, and that price will also be payable anytime a clone is left behind in an NPC station. Now, in the Reddit thread about this, I saw that I think it was CCP Ethereum was already asking for feedback about what would be an acceptable price for the people and or for the players, depending on their perspective. Now, from I think a purely objective point of view, 5 million ISK is not that much for basically an instant travel functionality within the game. But of course, it used to be completely free, and so this is a pretty big jump up, and maybe for really new players that don't have the earning potential just yet, it could become a barrier of entry. So I think CCP is actually still listening to feedback on that, and is probably willing to reduce the cost here per jump. But personally, I do think that adding a jump cost to using a jump clone makes sense, just because of how powerful and how good the instant travel itself is. They're also planning to allow you to do a jump within a station to a clone with, or within a Citadel, I should say, to a clone with different implants without having that trigger the timer. So it basically becomes, jump cloning becomes something that allows you to use an instant travel mechanic in EVE Online and a protection mechanic for your implants. So as a result, having to pay a fee for that, I think does make sense. Now, 5 million ISK may be a bit too high, and this is actually calculated by CCP on the cost of the fuel cost of having a clone facility running in a Citadel. So honestly, 5 million does sound pretty steep to me compared to it being free before. And so if they could maybe reduce that to 2 million or 1 million, and then to balance it out, they just basically need to reduce the fuel cost of the module itself. I think that there are ways to fix this, because a lot of people are complaining about the 5 million ISK, and personally I do understand it. At first I was like, man, that's a lot for every single use of a jump clone. So if you're using that for PvP, just adds to the cost of getting into PvP. So my personal opinion on that is, while paying a price for the functionality does make sense, 5 million right off the bat may just be a little bit too steep. So personally, I would go for like a 1 million fee and reduce the fuel costs on the module itself. What is also a possibility, of course, is to make it a scaling cost depending on the amount of SP that the clone itself has. So that would basically make it very cheap for new players that don't have a lot of skill points, and more expensive with like a ceiling at 5 million ISK for players that have like 100 million ISK, 50 million ISK, whatever you want to set that scale, that's up for CCP to decide, but that could fix it as well. So either go with just a lower cost for both the mechanic itself and the fuel cost for the jump clone service, or make it something that scales up to a ceiling that you think is a good price for allowing people to use the mechanic itself. I think that makes sense. I don't think that just going with 5 million ISK for everyone is the best choice, although, as I said, I understand the reason behind the mechanic and I'm not against it per se. The next one I think is really interesting, reprocessing. We are thinking of changing the way reprocessing taxes work. Currently, the taxes are taken out as a part of the material. So if you're reprocessing for 1000 tritanium, you only end up with like 990 tritanium because the taxes are being taken out in the reprocessing function. But the idea would be to change that into an ISK tax. So you would get 100% of the materials you would be reprocessing, depending on your skills, but you would have to pay a fee in ISK depending on the value that you're reprocessing. I do like the mechanic because it will enable owners of citadels, even the smallest citadels, to basically open up their reprocessing facilities to other miners in the system and get a bit of revenue from that so that they can compensate for the fuel cost. So I think it makes sense. The biggest drawback is, of course, that someone that's on an empty wallet that is just mining from the very beginning will have no way of reprocessing their ores without having some money in the bank. But honestly, I think that is not such a big hurdle to overcome. Most players, I would assume, do at least go through the tutorials, have a few million ISK in their wallet, and can thus get started with this taxation costing ISK for reprocessing. So I think that this is a good choice, and I like the fact that this will allow even players that have a medium citadel but can position themselves as a trustworthy citadel for miners in a system. They could make a little bit of money for running their citadel with a reprocessing facility. So I like this quite a bit. Next up here, compression. After internal discussion, we're planning to merge this service with the reprocessing service module. So basically, reprocessing and compression is going to be one module to allow this to be done in a citadel, and there will be no taxes on compressing. So that's basically a free option, which is okay since there is no current tax for compressing, and you're planning to basically switch the reprocessing tax to an ISK tax. This also gives new players an option of, okay, I can't reprocess because my wallet is empty, then I'll just compress it, move all of the ores that I've got in the ship that I have, because it's going to be much smaller in volume, and there will probably still be a bit of more value into compressing their ores as well, thus giving them an alternative if they were in the very unlikely situation that they could not pay the fees for reprocessing their ores. So I like this as well. This combined here makes it, I think, a very valuable service that you'll be able to allow anyone to use in any Citadel. Pretty important. The big one, of course, is the markets. Markets currently have two taxes: a transaction tax applied for sold items and brokers' fees for non-immediate orders, which are set at 1%, 1.5% and 1% respectively, to create an environment more competitive for Citadel. So this is really one of the big reasons why CCP wants to go ahead and increase the taxes on sales. They're planning to have a transaction tax of 2.5% across board. So that's already a 1% increase whenever you sell an item, but then have the broker's fee go up to 5 to 6% in NPC stations. And then in Citadels, players will be able to set the broker's fee at whatever they want. So presumably a lot of people will want like a percentage or half a percentage as a broker's fee. People might just set it at 0 if a Citadel is only used by the Alliance, for instance. So I think that this is really major. This is also what I understood CCP was going to do when they first announced Citadels, and they said that players would be able to create their own markets and have control over the taxes. This was exactly what I had in mind. They're going to make NPC stations, which are 100% safe, less competitive, more expensive to trade in, and they'll allow players to create an environment that is conducive to trading within their Citadels, in exchange, of course, for some risks that people have to take if they decide to trade into a Citadel. I'm super excited for this. Personally, I'm looking for it's the whole reason why I've been gathering materials to create my own large Citadel, to be ready for that when the expansion hits. And the biggest question now is, of course, location. That becomes the most important aspect for anyone that is planning to set up a large or an Excel Citadel, with the idea of having trade happen there and then getting some revenue from the taxes. Where are you going to put your Citadel? A lot of factors are going to come into play, like how far from trade hubs do you want to put it? Do you want to put it close to like a NOSEC region and become a trade partner for them, or things like that? I think what's also really important to note, it's not in this forum post, but apparently the idea for the asset safety system, which is of course the biggest worry of anyone that would start trading inside a Citadel, is that as long as the safety triggers within a system, so if there's an NPC station within the system, it's actually going to be free. That is very, very important, because my first idea was to put a Citadel in Dital, which doesn't have a station, but of course, just if one jump away there's a Citadel where there is a station, it's just so much safer. It's not going to cost anyone anything if that one blows up, compared to a Citadel in Dital. That plan for me is not going to work anymore. Nobody is going to choose trading in Dital and having to pay 10% for their asset safety, compared to trading one jump away and having free asset recovery from that Citadel. So that is very, very important. If, like me, you're planning to go for a large or an Excel Citadel, you're planning to put a trade hub in there, thinking about your location is really important to do right now. I'm really brainstorming a lot of possible options. I could still go with something that's going to try and support CVA, that's going to try and support the region there. I could go in a completely different route as well, so I've not made my decision yet, but all of this information basically confirms the plans that creating a market that is successful could become something that is very, very lucrative, but 5 to 6% is way more than I had expected. And so it's not just of putting a Citadel so people can do a little bit of trading there. No, this is something that will be competed for, I think, And that is absolutely mind-blowing in my book. I was already really happy that I would be able to have a little bit trade hub of my own, where maybe a few people or the local residents could do some reprocessing and some trading if they wanted to. But no, this will become something that I think will be fought over. The right locations, let's say in between trade hubs or on very busy routes, are going to be very coveted, and there will probably, in my opinion, be wars over this. Even I think it could include the big Gnostic alliances as well. This is just potentially a very, very lucrative, very passive source of income if you can get it to work. And as a result, setting up in like one of the good chokehold systems with a lot of traffic could be something that is not a good choice for a small group like us. And so as a result, I'm now taking a look at all possible options of where I would like to set up a Citadel myself. But this is really, really major. I think that it is indeed to incentivize the use of Citadels, of course. It is a major added ISK sink to the game as well, so this should have an impact on ISK inflation as well. But I think that this could end up being a major content driver, where people have wars over Citadel locations, where people will try to destroy successful citadels to just troll them, you know, a nice skill mail. And if indeed the asset recovery takes an amount of time, this could have a major impact on markets as well. So this, I think, is the really big one. A lot of I think station traders are very unhappy with the increased taxes, but me personally, I'm really excited for this. This is perfect for what I was planning to do. We can get bigger margins on everything we're producing, because this is actually a good change for manufacturers and miners, and we get a chance to have something of our own trading post that can make us some money with a real margin to actually do that. If CCP does, of course, end up with a broker's fee of around 5 to 6%, which personally I think they will probably go for something like that. And finally, maybe the bad news here is that at launch, contracts will not be available for Citadel. For the Citadels, that's a little bit of an unfortunate thing, because still having to do all of your contracts within an NPC station is a major bummer for big alliances that actually use contracts to provide ready ships for all of their members, for fleets and things like that. But apparently they won't be able to get that done for the Citadel expansion. But the transaction taxes and brokers fees for the contracts are also going to go up. So the idea here is probably to do the exact same thing, to allow Citadel owners to set the broker's fees on contracts as they please as well, thus incentivizing people to fully using Citadels rather than NPC stations. This is, I think, a major change. CCP actually coming out here and asking for feedback on that is pretty important. So if you have thoughts and ideas on this, I highly recommend that you do give your feedback to CCP. But this is completely in line with what I had in mind when CCP first said, we're going to come out with structures, people are going to create their own markets, and they'll have the ability to control the taxes. This is major in my book. This is going to be a big addition to the sandbox, and I can't wait for all the chaos that this is going to create. I really think that this could end up being a major content driver in the game. And for me personally, I have to decide, where do I want to put my Citadel? It's not just about finding a good region with a lot of trade. It's also about managing the risk of having a lot of exposure, a lot of traffic, big entities nearby. All of that actually starts to play a role, considering how big the advantage can be compared to an NPC station. I really do think that this could become a major moneymaker for people that get this right, and a major content driver in the game. I'm very excited for this. It's absolutely awesome in my book. Anyways, who would have thought that someone could get this excited about increased taxes? But there we go. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.